At the time of recording this video, Gran Turismo 7 has 5 cars with a purchase price of $20 million apiece. We're going to take a quick look at each of them in order from worst to best and see if any of them are worth your time or your money. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with number 5. Coming in at number 5, we have the 1952 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. I had high hopes for this car, but after purchasing it, there's not a lot of mods you can do to it, so it ends up staying pretty low in the performance. The performance points ended up at 584, and it's mainly due to the lack of horsepower and torque. It ends up with 229 horsepower and 241 foot-pounds of torque. Now the weight of the vehicle is at 2,381 pounds, so that's really not a lot of power for a race vehicle. And this is classified as a race car. So the top speed we ended up getting to was 173 miles per hour or 278 kilometers per hour. All of these top speeds are coming from the test track, so this car just doesn't have the torque to really get it there in a real racing scenario. And I tested all of these on Le Mans just because most of these cars were actually built for Le Mans. And in this setup, the car just couldn't hang. It does have the ability to qualify for the Tokyo 600, but you really need a car that'll break 200 just to run that race. It takes 12 and a half hours to earn $20 million in Gran Turismo in its current build, or you can purchase the credits spending $200. This car can't compete in any of those races, so I really wouldn't recommend buying it unless you're looking to complete the collection. Coming in at number 4 is the 1938 Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B. This car ends up being built out at a performance point of 653 with a max horsepower of 346 and the torque at 294 foot-pounds. Now this is a supercharged engine once you build it up, and it's an inline 8, so it gives you a unique sound to the game, so there is a little benefit there, and it is pretty tail happy. The weight of the vehicle ends up at 2,251 pounds, and we ended up getting a max speed of 158 miles per hour or 254 kilometers per hour. Now, even though the max speed of the car was less than the Mercedes, we ended up getting a better position on Le Mans, and it ended up being a pretty fun race. So I ended up using a fuel map of 3 for the first 3 laps. On lap 4, I ended up maxing it out to 6 to extend, and ended up getting another lap out of it, and then going back to 3 at the end of the race. This put me in a position where I was able to get in front of all of the opponents other than the Viper, and then it ended up where I was able to get around the Viper in the corners, but he would pull ahead of me in the straights, which led to some interesting racing, and by the end of it I ended up having an extra lap where they needed to pit, and ended up making it a relatively easy win as well. Using these longer range fuel maps also took some of the twitchiness out of the rear end. On fuel map 1, when you're having the maximum power, the car ends up with snappy oversteer, and it's hard to compensate. But when you put it down to fuel map 3, it takes enough power away to where you can catch that rear end, and it's kind of fun to drive. But again, at $20 million, this car is only a luxury. There is no reason to rush out and buy it. You can pick it up at some point if you feel the need to add it to your collection, but it's going to be a long time if this thing ever earns its money back. In third place, we have the 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. It's a very historic car, it's a very beautiful car, but it's not a very fast car by today's standards. The top speed we were able to get was 180 miles per hour or 289 kilometers. The performance points maxed out at 641, and it ended up with 327 horsepower with 243 foot-pounds of torque, at 1,940 pounds. Now this one is naturally aspirated, so you get that power a little bit more linearly. This car is very well balanced and it's a lot of fun to drive, but it does lack power. Though for half of the price, I definitely prefer the Ferrari P4 from 1967. Again, you shouldn't feel the need to rush out and buy this car, but it is pretty special to have in your garage when you build up the money. Coming in at second place, we have the 1964 Shelby Cobra Daytona Coupe. Now this car doesn't feel as refined as the Ferrari and has more of a brutish feel to it. Even the interior looks a lot more utilitarian, but it's still a lot of fun to drive, and that's because it's where it lacks the refined character, it's very powerful and very torquey. So it ends up with a performance point of 697 fully built out and has 613 horsepower with 458 foot-pounds of torque. And this car again is supercharged, whereas the Ferrari was naturally aspirated. The weight of the vehicle came in at 2,299 pounds, so it's still light enough to be agile, but it's much more powerful. And it ends up bringing the vehicle up to a top speed of 206 miles per hour or 331 kilometers per hour. So on Le Mans especially, you can really dominate your competition, and it's just a good drive. This was the first of the $20 million cars I personally purchased, but it didn't end up holding the #1 spot. I'm sure it comes as no surprise, the car holding the #1 spot is the 1994 McLaren F1. Even though the Alfa Romeo is also classified as a road car, the McLaren is the only vehicle in this list that's actually built to be a road car. It was designed and conceived as the ultimate driver's car. The McLaren was one of the first cars to have active aero, and it had a unique centralized driving position, which you can tell this is the European model because there are passenger seats on either side of the driver. The BMW motor creates a beautiful sound for this car, and even though it remains naturally aspirated after fully building it, it ends up with 752 horsepower and 583 foot-pounds of torque. The weight of the vehicle is 2,513 pounds, so it's a very high performance vehicle. It ends up with the overall performance points at 774 fully built. Now you can tune this car to fit into the 700 series races and the 800s for maximum grinding, and if you leave the car stock and just add the ballast and a little bit of the detuning to the engine, you can qualify for the 600 Tokyo race as well. And then what I ended up doing to win that race with clean racing was running on fuel map 6 for most of the race, and then the last couple of laps I've switched to fuel map 4. You don't need to pit at all, and you're running the sports hard tires, so you don't run into any kind of wear issues either. The car performs great. The top speed of the car came in at 262 miles per hour or 421 kilometers per hour. Now it does have a slight tendency to push, but just a little bit of extra braking will get you through that. Even with this car being pretty solid, it may be difficult to justify a 12.5-hour grind in order to purchase one car. And there are alternatives to purchasing the road-going version, in that there are 2 race versions of this car as well for around half the price. There's the regular McLaren, and then there's the long tail. So either of those cars might be able to scratch the itch if you're just wanting to get the McLaren F1 in your garage. These super high-priced cars upset a lot of people when the game was first released, but it's worth pointing out that none of these cars are necessary to purchase for any type of completion of the game or for any of the achievements. They are strictly a luxury, and honestly some of them are worth buying and others just aren't. But I hope you found this video helpful, and please like and subscribe for more content. Thank you so much, and have a great day.